Hi, Randy the mobile home guy here again today. We're going to uncover a swamp cooler today and change the pads, and we're going to hook it up to water and get it all ready for the season. Go over a few things of what that looks like. Okay, I like to pull these off very strategically when I do pull them off. I've taken the cords off of it, disconnected the knot here on one of the corners. You'll find a knot oftentimes has a drawstring in there, keeps that bottom tight. So I've disconnected that knot, pulled on this a little bit, and I like to take them off like this. So I'll pull these two corners up and pull to the center, up and pull to the center, up and pull to the center, and kind of go like this and got a straight top there. I'll pull it straight up and I'll set it down here like that. Then I can lift these corners over and back, corners up and back to the center, put the cords right here and roll it up. Okay, the first thing we want to do once we get the door off is to hook up the upper line here, the water line, into the float valve here. This is the float valve. This is a little half-inch nut that goes on there. It's a little plumbing brass fitting onto the end of the water line there. So we're going to, what we're going to do is we're going to hold real tight here on this so it doesn't turn, and then we're going to tighten on our piece here. So we're going to tighten that piece on while holding here tight. This thing will tighten like this, and then we'll be ready to go down below and turn on the water and hook that up. We want to talk a little bit about why we put this little curve in there. These things actually come with a straight rod, just straight down. And so what we'll do is we'll put this little curve in here so the water hits off of here and runs straight down. These have a tendency to let the water run down here and into the float here and fill it up, and it's not light enough to float, and it'll overflow the swamp cooler. So we want to put that little curve in there, and how we do that, we'll take our little wrench here and we'll grab it. So here's the float, see, and we'll grab it right here, and then we'll push straight down, okay, and we'll grab it just past that, just past it there, and we'll go straight up with it like this, okay, grab it just past that again and go back down, see, like that. And now we have that little curve in there, and this will help you a lot, and you can kind of bend this up a little bit to whatever way you would like it. So we like to have that curve in there, and the water will drip off right here. Okay, so oftentimes your water line for the swamp cooler will come down through the pipe up there, the double walled portion of the pipe. It'll come down and from the roof and find a little valve like this somewhere. Sometimes there'll be a little pipe on the cold side, a little saddle valve that'll pierce the pipe and have that on to feed this main little copper line here. But what we're going to do, so you can see the little brass piece on there, half-inch again, most of the time unless they've done something weird, and then we'll just put this onto there, make sure it's real straight and tight, and then we'll turn this little valve here on. Make sure to hold this valve right here really tight with a pair of pliers or something that's going to make it this secure as you're tightening that nut. Okay, we've gotten the nut on there and tightened it really tight. We've held while we did that, and then we've opened the valve here. Sometimes the rod on here will drip, so underneath there will be a little drip. You can tighten this little nut right here, which sometimes stops that. Makes this a little harder to turn, but it'll keep you from having to replace that, so tighten this sometimes a little bit. We want to check this, but at the end. We want to make sure this fitting or none of this stuff, of course, is dripping at all, but we can't do that right now because it's filling up and it's not under a whole lot of pressure. So we want to wait till the swamp cooler has filled up and the float valve has stopped dripping up below, and make sure to come back down here and make sure there's no drips there. Okay, you can see that the water is running, and it's running straight out the hole because we haven't put the drain in yet. I like to use this opportunity to clean it out as best we can. I mean, they do get pretty darn dirty. They're going to be dirty here in another week, but we want to start them out clean. So before we put this in here, we'll kind of try to clean up a lot of that debris down there at the bottom and get us a nice clean start. Okay, we're going to move on now to installing the plug. Most of the time you have a plug in the swamp cooler. It's been pulled for the last season to drain the unit, and they put it somewhere on the unit is what we most often do. We'll set it over here or something to that effect. So what you have here is you have this little nut that's on the bottom here. It's a little nut there. You have a little washer that goes on the inside, okay? And you'll put make sure the washer's on there good and clean. That area is good and clean. You'll put it there, through there, and reach underneath, and you'll screw it on there. You can use a wrench. Make sure not to do it too hard on these plastic ones, because they do break. So we'll put a wrench on that and tighten it up, and that's all there is to that. Sometimes they don't have a plug, so you won't have to worry about that, but just make sure that yours does not before you start filling her up and waiting all day for it. Also, I like to, while it's filling up and I'm moving on to different things, I will like to put a wrench on this thing here just to weigh it down a little bit, because as it floats up, it slows way down, so it won't fill as quickly. I put a wrench on that just to kind of get past that end of it slow part. Alright, we're going to move on now to oiling up the unit. We're going to let that fill up. And we like to use, make sure it's for electric motors and bearings, that this here has a little spout on it that comes out. And a little bit of oil needs to be on these motors most of the time. Sometimes they're a sealed bearings unit like this one here. You're looking for a little spout, a little plug in here. Most of the time it's a yellow spout. It's not always going to be on the front. Most of the time it's supposed to be where you can have this on the top of this little piece right in here. Be a little yellow spot. And it's not always right here. Sometimes they've installed the motor wrong and it's down here or on the other side or back. So look real hard for that oil spout. It's not really going to be up here or those kinds of things. It's going to be down here. And same on both sides, okay? Both sides. You know, sometimes those are a little hard to get to, but if you get that oiler, it'll be a little easier that way. So some of them don't have them, but you want to put a few drops in there before you get it started. Also, you're going to want to move over to the shaft of the unit, and you'll see these little, there's the shaft, the wheel, it's on both sides. You can have these little pieces here that open right there. We're going to open this, put a little bit of oil right down in that hole there. And when I'm doing that, I put that oil in there and I'll spin the wheel, give it a little spin, and then we'll do on the other side there. We'll run over here and see what that looks like. Right here, there's another one there. Oil goes there, and that should be it. All right, here we are in a different swamp cooler, and the motor does have those little oilers. So if you can see real close, it does say oil right on there. That's kind of what we're looking for right there, is a little cap. So I like to use a really small screwdriver, and make sure you don't knock the head off of that, 'cause sometimes they're a little brittle. Just kind of get under there and work it a little bit, and it'll kind of work it out. Sometimes get a pair of needle nose pliers and kind of pull it right out, and you can see that it'll pull that plug out, and right in that hole just drop a few drops of oil. And then same thing on the other side. It's going to be a little hard to see, but you can see it right there. Same exact thing. And then put some oil in there and kind of spin the motor as you do that, and then put these caps back on, and that'll be enough oil for the season. Okay, we'll move on now to replacing the pads while that thing fills up. There's a lot of different applications for the doors and how to get these brackets out and those kinds of things. The doors come off different ways too, so this one has a unique system. This little piece here pulls out of the center, which pulls this piece out. Make sure you save these and don't get them lost, of course. Make sure you got a good spot for those to stay. And then these will come off and we'll pull this pad out, so we'll get at taking all those off. Okay, this is a different type of door. This one works a little different. Same idea with the back, with the door there, 4 sides. This has a little rod here and here. Basically just pulls straight out there, and this pad comes off there. The new pad goes on there, and basically kind of you can put the top in first, pull the bottom back out like that, and then these 2 side walls go in like that. This is a lot easier one on this one here, so that's how that one works. Okay, so we got all the brackets off here, and we're just going to pull this this old piece out here. Looks like this one was by a cotton tree, so a cottonwood tree, so it had a lot of grime. So we're going to want to get all this stuff off, of course, before we put the new pads back on. I want to talk a little bit about the new pads here. There's a few different types. There's some allergy types and different things, but here's the 2 main kind that we see here in Colorado. There's these aspen shredded aspen pieces there. And then there's also this foam one here, designed specifically for swamp coolers. Now I like this one, the blue one, the little foamy one, a lot better because these don't really lose a lot of the debris that these do seems like, depending on where you are, of course, fairly quickly. So every few years these will start to come apart and fall on the bottom. I like these a lot better. They don't seem to do that, these little foam ones here. Because what we're looking at here, I'll go over to the swamp cooler here. The water, what it does is, of course there's a filter on the pump here, which sometimes will get clogged by some of that debris. So the water comes here, fills up here in a reservoir, gets pumped here into this pipe here, up here of course, and then out to everything here. So we want to keep this line really clean. Now that filter helps us do that, make sure that's real clean of course, but sometimes a lot of debris in here will hinder that. So I like the blue foam ones, but to each their own for that. Okay, so we've opened the roll. We've cut one of the sides off. Make sure to get up under there, of course. Don't leave any gaps down here. Any gaps is going to allow air flow through, which has not been moist air, of course, so it's going to not have the evaporating cooling effect that you want to. So make sure they're all tight in all the corners and everything. And now we'll put the sides back on and do that 3 more times. Alright, I want to talk to you a little bit about the water level in the reservoir, or the bottom of the swamp cooler. So once the float has shut off completely, we want to make sure to check the level and see what that's looking like. I seem to do just 1 knuckles worth. Always seems to be fine, so we're about 1.5 inches, 2 inches might be a little bit too much there. But the reason being for that is once you turn your swamp cooler on, it begins to pump water immediately into the sides and fills up those sides. And meanwhile though, the cooler bottom will continue to fill up and that reservoir will be full again. And when you go to shut your swamp cooler off, those sides will drain back down into the reservoir, and sometimes if it's too high it'll overflow that. So best thing to do is not fill it all the way up, just fill it about 1 inch, 1.5 inches from the top there, and that should be great. The way to do that, of course, is to adjust the float. Now, the only real way to adjust the float is by bending this rod down a little bit, which pushes this more into the water, of course, and kind of pushes it up so it stops that float. So bend the rod down a tiny bit, hold here really tight, and bend that rod down a little bit. So hold tight, bend that down. Okay, so we are ready to move on now. So we are needing to go downstairs and check all of the different settings on a swamp cooler. Usually there is 5 settings. So there's a high and low and a pump setting, and then there's a high and low cool. So it's going to be pump, it's going to be high and low vent, and high and low cool. Now high and low cool just means that the pump and the fan motor are working at the same time. So it's pumping water up, drizzling it along the sides there as the motor is pulling air through those sides and down into there. The vent setting just means that the motor's on, and of course pump only means that just the pump is on. So why the pump only setting? The pump only setting would be if I've gotten home and it has been a warm day outside. I don't want to have this metal box that's all heated start just blowing right away. What I would like to do is make sure that those sides are really super wet before we just start pulling in outside air through that side there. So we're going to turn the pump on for about 5 minutes, and then once those sides have pre-soaked, then we'll turn it on to the cool settings. Now you don't have to do that. There's nothing that says that that has to be full of water or moisture before you turn it just directly to those cool settings. You can turn it to the cool settings and just forget it, but that will help if it's been a hot day. Now say for instance it's a cool day, but it's going to get hot real soon, you can just go straight, and you want to turn some air on now, you can just go straight to those cool settings. Now when it's later in the day and it's nice and cool outside, that's when you'd want to do those vent settings. Or early morning, you want to get some of that outside fresh air in there without all the moisture. Just turn it to the vent settings, and that'll turn out some outside fresh air into the house. So cool outside means vent only. Hot outside and late in the day means turn it on to pump only, then cool settings. Or start up, maybe it's starting to get warm, then you can just go right to those cool settings. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, before you go down and turn on any of the settings, however, I want to make sure that on some pumps you can see the little rod right here. You see this little rod there, and that'll turn. Give that a little turn with your fingers just turn it, kind of break it free from having sat for so long. These are real low torque motors. They can't really push a pebble up a hill, but they can maintain for a long time once they get going. So after they've sat for a while, I like to just turn that rod a little bit, turn it, okay, and then keeps them from binding up, and sometimes when it binds up it burns it out. So just a little thing to do before you go down there. If it doesn't have a rod, you can't see it, nothing you can do, but if it's this type or something, you can see the rod, just give it a little turn. Same thing with the motor, give it a little turn, but should have done that because you oiled it. But if you haven't oiled it, give it a little turn like that before you turn on, because it's been setting for a little bit. So that'll help from burning out some of those components. Now we can see that the water is coming out of one of these here tubes at the top and draining down the side. We want to go around and make sure it's doing that on all 8 of them, or 4 of them, depending on which swamp cooler you have there. Make sure those are working, and make sure that's working on both high cool and low cool, and on the pump only setting, and not working when it says vent only or high and low vent. Then that would turn these off. Make sure those settings are correct. Now we're out here today looking at this swamp cooler, and once they get a little dirty, sometimes there's, you know, you can clean them up again, of course, and but I've seen it, and it does kind of work sometimes, where if you pour like a half a cup of bleach right by around the base of the pump, put the door back on and run down below and put it on the pump only setting for about 20 minutes or so. That kind of cleans out some of the pads and that kind of thing, kind of gives it a little bit of a freshening up. We have all seen those little cubes that sit there, help some of the calcium deposits and things, but that is a little tip. You can put a little bit of bleach around the base of the pump right before you turn it on. Close the door, run downstairs there, and turn it on to pump only for a little bit. Okay, hopefully we remembered to come back and check this here at the end. So make sure no water anywhere on the thing. Even a tiny little bit of water, tiniest little bit of water. Oh, it might just be a little bit of water, a little bit of drip. That's going to be significant over a season, of course, over a whole day, over a month. So dripping once every, you know, 2-3 minutes or something, even a tiniest little bit of moisture in there. Address that now just to kind of make sure that that doesn't pile up. So tightening this most often, holding this, tightening this most often kind of solves the little drip that you see right there. Sometimes this fitting will have to be replaced, but hopefully not, and you can just tighten this nut right here and that should solve any problems. But it looks like we did good today. So okay, looks like we're all buttoned up and good to go on this swamp cooler. Thanks for watching, appreciate it.